create this vision along with the companies and the managers, what we had seen, people have taken it to their own level. You know, say Thomson Reuters as an example, right? So they did make learning of sign language as a fun and game-based activity. So then it has made a person with hearing impairment easily to become included in the team. And we had seen in Cisco, in one team where is a service request administrator, out of 20 members, 13 people are visually impaired. Right? So where the manager really felt, okay, well, it doesn't matter whether he is a disabled or non-disabled, he is going to deliver the work for me. And I am sensitizing my entire ecosystem. So that's where I am creating an inclusive environment so that whoever comes in, it becomes easier for them.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
As far as I am concerned, whether it is women or differently abled people whom we also employ in these organizations, I would say inclusion means the way what we can do is equal opportunity means equal hardship also. So all we can do is to make a facilitative infrastructure. The environment can be facilitative. You hold hands when perhaps it is required. Some soft touch is required at different instances in life. But the crux of the matter remains is the grind has to be equal. And if you excel, you are ready to take up the higher challenge.
Okay, well said, Usha. Thank you. I think from Wipro's standpoint, I'll just make one point that it has to be role modeled by the leaders of the organization, right? So you can't do it as a tokenism and leave it there. It has to be role modeled right through the employee life cycle. And I see, there are leaders who make very strong and visible statements around inclusion, and those are appreciated and emulated across the organization. So leadership buy-in is really important. Thank you so much. I personally really enjoyed this discussion. Lovely having all of you here, and thank you to the wonderful audience as well.
Thank you, Priyanka, Usha, Vijaya, Subhaya and Bindu for sharing your views. Unconsciously, you all have added a strong pillar to NHRD, and for the first time, we have gone women in leadership roles perspective to an inclusive perspective. And it was a conscious decision where we felt that leadership, if it's not inclusive, it's not leadership. So we felt that maybe the whole program will focus on gender leadership and how to support diversity when we're talking about gender. We will certainly have a session which will focus on inclusion. So thank you so much. With you, we have taken this step, so we are thankful to each one of you. To do the honors, I would request Bala, our chapter president. He heads Global HR for Cafe Coffee Day, to come on the stage and do the honors by presenting memento to the session chair and the speakers.
For this summit, and working with NHRD and our knowledge partners Deloitte to really put this together. I think when we were building the agenda, there were a few things that we wanted to be very, very mindful of. There's been a lot that has been discussed about the business case for diversity, and we wanted to consciously move from talking about just the business case to say what are the real examples, where have we created impact, and what can we really challenge ourselves on. So we really wanted to raise the bar, and I think each of the 5 sessions have done justice to that, because it's not just about sharing some of the good practices, but also putting certain questions to trigger what next, how do we move forward. So I'm going to just use a framework that actually Apurva Purohit in the first session gave to us as a way to consolidate the takeaways. And she very nicely challenged all of us to say that when we look at diversity and inclusion, we really need to look at it from the dimension of what, of course, the organizations are doing, and specifically in case of gender, what is the role? What's the conversation that we are having with men in the organizations? What is it that women themselves have to do? And of course, the fourth pillar is what is it that society and governments, which I think Bindu really brought it up very nicely today. So I think all those pillars need to participate in this conversation on gender and inclusion. So let me share some of the takeaways from an organization's perspective. I think there is a lot that we saw through these 1.5 days conversations that organizations are doing around various pillars of diversity and inclusion. So one of the takeaways that I personally I'm kind of walking away with is that you have to really look at this as a conversation which touches various pillars. So specifically when you talk about gender, it's about hiring, it's about development, it's about manager sensitization and the culture building that you're doing in the organization. It's also about getting the key stakeholders engaged. And I think, Priyanka, you brought that point very strongly, and it came through in our conversations through these 1.5 days. What are the role models that we see? How do we see leaders, leading from the front in these conversations? And for us in Schneider, for example, our global CEO is really our champion for diversity. One of the frameworks which I really liked, which came from a perspective of what organizations can do from a gender diversity perspective, is that we need to look at support for women at different stages in their career journey. And I think it was probably Wipro who shared about how when they are supporting women in the organization, they are really looking at a framework of 3 levels. So when you hire women, at the entry stage, it's about really fueling the fire in the belly. It's about fueling ambition. It's about how do you really get them to look at and expose them to what could ambition mean like, and what's the size of the game that they would like to play in their careers. And as the women get into the stage of marriage and maternity, it's about flexibility. How do we create practices and policies that can help them move through this critical stage in their life? And that's about flexibility. But when you look at women at the top, then it's about empowerment, it's about sponsorship. And I think one of the takeaways that came through also yesterday from our conversation was that we need to move beyond mentorship to also look at sponsorship, which is a very different concept, when we look at supporting women and moving them through the layers of talent pipeline in the organization. So I think there's a lot that organizations are doing. There's a lot more that we can continue to do. The second pillar is women themselves, and I think, Usha, you brought it up very, very strongly today, and the same conversation also happened yesterday, where I think there was a collective view that women themselves have to take a very different view to themselves, and how would they like to play their role and the careers they would like to take forth. One of the concepts that came, and in fact, again, I think Apurva challenged us a lot yesterday, was that sometimes women, think, or they would like to take the opportunity or the easier way to quit when going gets tough. And that's the time when I think we need to challenge ourselves, because when you look at career, it's a long-term game. And there will be ups and downs, there will be stages that one goes through. So how do you look at careers not just from a short span of time, but look at it from a long span of time? The second thought that came up was that I think as women sometimes, our threshold for contribution tends to be a little higher. And in fact, one of our CEOs who was on the panel yesterday brought that out, even from our own experience, that as women, sometimes we want to be 100% sure before we raise our hand for an opportunity or we raise our hand to contribute in a conversation. So our threshold for contribution is much higher. And that's where I think we as, have to kind of question ourselves that can we raise a hand? Can we sit on the table? How do we really make our voice heard? And sometimes it's okay not to be 100% ready for a conversation, but can you really put your voice on the table? The other piece, I think, from a women's role perspective is how do we really also lean out and be comfortable for seeking help? How do you create your support mechanisms, both at the personal level, but also your informal networks and formal networks and mentors? And finally, it was about how women can support each other. I think there was a lot of interesting conversation yesterday and a kind of a debate that do we as women create enough support groups to support each other? So I think there's a lot that we as women can do to be more active in the whole process of this diversity and inclusion. And finally, I think men need to play, men need to be part of this conversation. This cannot be, so it was good to see yesterday that there was equal representation in this conversation of both men and women. And we spoke about that a lot yesterday also in our conversation on the boards, women in the boards, and how organizations are doing a lot for bringing forward some of the unconscious bias that is there, and that's something, a conversation that we can have. I think today, I've personally really enjoyed the last session. I think one key takeaway for us is that any conversation of diversity needs to move beyond gender, and I think inclusion is a very, very critical part of this conversation on diversity. It's about really, the role of education, the role of creating awareness, sensitization. I think there's a lot TCS, story around how do we really focus on creating more awareness and sensitization. I think one key takeaway was also from Subaya, who's, I think it really triggered in me that when you look at inclusion, it's a mindset. And I'm actually going out feeling there's so many things that, when you look at people with special abilities, you just have to shift the mindset. So it's the perspective that you need to change when you look at inclusion beyond diversity. So I would say, I think a lot of new questions raised. This is a conversation that's going to be an ongoing conversation. I think there's a lot of role that different stakeholders will need to continue playing. It is going to be a process of sustained change. One thing that I think for a lot of women, senior women leaders sitting in this group today is also about how do we take responsibility to become those role models, because one of our CEOs challenged us yesterday is that sometimes women who've made it, they don't want to be involved in the diversity conversation, and they almost begin to become the male archetype, that why should I be involved in the diversity conversation? I think there's a huge responsibility that women in this forum as well have to take the lead in terms of playing that role of sponsorship, mentorship, and being a role model. So I think these are some of the key takeaways that we've had. I think we'll continue to engage in these conversations. And once again, thank you for being, for providing this opportunity to Schneider Electric in partnering with NHRD and with Deloitte. Thank you.
Thanks a ton, Meenal, for sharing the summing up, and the way you have done it, you can only do it. And she has been a constant pillar while we were designing this program. Even each word which you read in the agenda, we have debated it many times, why to use this word, why to request this speaker, and what value they will bring to the table, and how we should lead the discussion with an open mind, that let's see what comes up. And equally, I would say, Meenal, we are really happy. It was a real courage for us to go out and talk about beyond gender leadership. So thank you once again, Meenal, for this. And now, to propose a vote of thanks, I would request Mr. Ramesh Ranjan, our representative from the Bangalore chapter, to come forward and propose a vote of thanks. Over to Ramesh, please.
I know the lunch is just around the corner. I don't want to be between the lunch and you. But On behalf of the National HRD Network, the Delhi chapter or the national chapter, we would like to thank, first of all, the principal title sponsors, Schneider Electric, for having partnered with us in organizing this 4th summit, which is of great importance at this point of time, and looking at the response that all of you had over here. We would like to also thank our knowledge partners and all others who partnered with us in sponsoring this program. Without their support, we couldn't have organized this program. All the speakers who partnered with us, the entire leadership team of Schneider Electric yesterday, and all the other luminaries, the CEOs, the heads of HRs, the business leaders and others who participated as panel discussion members and sharing their insights to us. A big thanks to all of them. And last but not the least, of course, I need to thank the student volunteers from IFM for having braved it out last 1.5 days in organizing and helping us supporting this program. Thanks to Kamaljit, to Dhananjay, the entire NHRD central team for having put together this wonderful program, and I'm sure that all of us would be very, very happy at what's been the outcome of this program. We look forward to you all coming back next year and also supporting NHRD in all the other initiatives that we do. Thank you very much, and we now invite you for lunch.